Hello, world, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Little Bit Different podcast. I hope everything has been wonderful with you since you last heard my voice. I am in Ghana. I'm in the western region of Ghana in a little town called Cape 3 Points, and I'm staying at a place called Escape 3 Points. And oh my God, it's divine and heavenly. I'm just surrounded. I'm right now in what's called Palm Tree Cathedral, which is a venue that I've rented from them to record a series of podcasts because holy smokes, it just feels magical here. And what's so cool is that when I started my trip to Africa, and even more specifically West Africa, I had done zero research. I had no idea where I was going to go. I had no idea what was going to happen, who I was going to meet. And the universe brought me here to this absolutely lush, tropical jungle that has the most wonderful, serene, peaceful, and ethereal energy. So I'm so happy to share all of this with you. And this is an exciting episode for me because I'm going to talk a little bit about this trip that I've been on. I'm coming up almost at 1 full month of traveling Africa on my own. And for my business, I guess in my life, but well, yeah, for both. It often happens that I have conversations with clients where I'll be like, oh, I'm in Mozambique, or I'm in Zambia, or I'm in Ghana, or I'm doing this. Or I get interviewed to be on different podcasts or speak as part of different summits. And I realize like people are super interested about what it's like traveling to these places alone. And they're curious about the different stories that I have and the different experiences that I have and how I go about and do all of these things. So I thought for an episode that I would talk a little bit about this trip and what I've experienced and where I've gone and how I've done it. And the intention, as always, you know, I have an intention for every episode. The intention is to share a little bit different way of traveling and looking at things and trying things and going places. So my hope is that in listening to this, you're going to be entertained wherever it is in the world that you're listening to it. I hope that you find it enjoyable, and you know, it's cool for me to bring you along the journey with me as well. And in addition to that, maybe it inspires you to travel in your own unique way or to do something differently than maybe you would have done otherwise. So without further ado, I'm gonna jump into it. And the first thing that I want to say about this trip that I'm on right now in Africa, and I'll just say that so far I've been in Mozambique, I've been in Zambia, I've been in Zimbabwe, and now I'm in Ghana. I have a thing about going to new places. So I love going to new countries. I've now visited over 100 countries, and I'm going to prepare a special episode. I'm just waiting to organize all my thoughts about really putting in perspective and thinking about what I've learned. But for me, when I'm presented with the opportunity to go to places I've already been or to go to new places, I'll almost always choose going to new places. And I just want to talk a little bit about why and my approach to that. And the thing for me about going to new places, especially when you don't know anyone and you're going yourself, that's like the trifecta: a new place by yourself where you don't know anyone. It's such a fascinating and exciting experience because you're really showing up as the latest version of yourself. You're showing up as the latest software updated version of yourself. Like the Cory who got to Ghana on December 31st by himself without knowing anyone, without having any intentions to have come here. And I'll talk a little bit about how that happened. But that's the latest version of me. That's who I am. So it's so interesting getting to a new place as the latest version of yourself and just observing, like, what do I spend my time doing? What do I care about? What's important to me? What do I eat? How do I move? Where do my thoughts go on a daily basis? And it's so interesting because when we're in a routine of our life, when we're in the same place that we're always in, when we're in places that we're really comfortable with, you just go through the motions to some degree, right? I know I'm going to go to this coffee shop, or I'm going to do this, and then this afternoon I do this, and every Thursday afternoon I do this, and the things that we're doing are awesome, but we're so comfortable in that routine that there's something for me that's always very jolting about being in a new place by myself where I don't know anyone and really have no recommendations. So that's what brought me here to Escape 3 Points, to western region of Ghana. That's what brought me to Africa. That's what really brought me on this trip. And I was just in a place where I felt like I was ready to rediscover that and dive back into being alone, maybe feeling uncomfortable a little bit, and appreciating and just enjoying the growth of everything that's happened. So I will say that I did have some of this trip planned, which normally I don't. For me, in an ideal scenario, I just go to a place, I book a one-way ticket, and I have no idea what's going to happen and how long I'm going to stay. This trip, I knew that I was going to be in Mozambique for a week, and then I knew that I was going to be in Zambia for a week, and then my plan was to go to Kenya. I didn't make it there, and I'll share a little bit about that, and instead I came to Ghana. But I would say that my trip would have been very, very different if I didn't plan anything beforehand. This is the paradox always in life of wanting to see certain things and go to certain places, where it's like, oh, do I book stuff or do I just let it happen? And for me, I find a mix between the two is awesome. And then also just being open and present and realizing, like, hey, if I feel like switching something, I'll switch it. But I want to start off by sharing a little bit about the trip to Mozambique and my time in Mozambique. And Mozambique was just absolutely phenomenal. It's the only country that I only got to visit one place in. So since then, I've been able to see a couple of different places in the countries that I visited, which is luxurious in the sense that you get a different perspective. A lot of the times we go to a place, we only go to one place. Like how many times if you've gone to the Netherlands, you only go to Amsterdam, right? Just as an example. So Mozambique, I only got to go to one place, and I went to Vilanculo. And what's so awesome, I had the best time ever, and I just want to talk a little bit about language. So having spent time in Brazil, I taught myself Portuguese. It's really not nearly as difficult as you think it is. I spoke Spanish fluently before, which helped a lot. But in Mozambique, they speak Portuguese, and I have to say the absolute hands down coolest thing ever about being in Mozambique was being able to speak the language of the local people. Like, I was so far from home. I didn't know anybody. I had no idea where I was. I didn't know anything about the local tribes or the cultures or anything. But the simple fact that I could walk down the street, buy a banana in the local language and just talk to local people and chat with them and ask them about their day and understand what's going on and how things work, really for me inspires me to double down on language as an investment. That's like, first and foremost, Mozambique was so special because I could communicate with anyone. And then Mozambique I was in a town called Vilanculo. It's a fishing town where there's wind. So there's kite surfing there, which is really cool. And I've mentioned a little bit, but I'm starting my Pilates for kite branding. So I got to teach some Pilates classes for kite surfers, which was really, really cool, and test it out and see what works. And I had the best time doing that and meeting people. And it's an incredibly beautiful place. Right across from Vilanculo, there's a series of islands, like an archipelago, and the main one is called Bazarutu Island, and holy smokes, like paradise on earth, most beautiful place you could imagine, something really, really, really special. Mozambique was beautiful and laid back and relaxed enough that firstly, Vilanculo is a safe place that you can walk anywhere. At night, I felt really, really comfortable walking anywhere. But most importantly, I just met the friendliest people ever. And at this point, I was still working. Over this trip, I took some periods offline. So when I'm working, I have a specific regimen that I'll follow, and I'll speak a little bit about that in a moment. So the first couple of days in Mozambique, I wasn't like full out travel mode, but anytime I'm traveling and I'm in a new place and I'm working, I have my set work hours. I'll have my calls, I'll have my meetings with my team members, but I'll also block 3 hours off to do a local excursion. So I'll find out, okay, what's interesting in town? What would be a nice cultural experience? Is there a museum? Is there a market? Is there something that I should do? And the first day and look, this is the reality. Africa is very, very different than South America. And Africa is very, very different than North America. And Africa is very, very different from Southeast Asia. And Africa is very, very different from Europe. So I find that this is my 6th trip to Africa in my life. And I notice that I always go through the same sort of pattern or habit where the first day I'm super guarded and I'm like, whoa, what is going on? Who are these people? What's happening? Is this safe? Can I walk on the beach? Can I do anything? And what's so funny is every time that's how I start. And honestly, after 48 hours, I'm like, walking at night, chatting with local people, making friends. But there always is that, it's something so different. I'm so far outside of my comfort zone that I don't really know what's going on. So I had a really, really moment that I would say is sort of like, it was very early, but it was my turning point in my trip in Africa. And I was in Vilankulu, so the first day there's a cool local municipal market there. I went to the market and I was staying at a nice hotel, and I said, okay, can you get a driver to come get me? Okay, so the driver came and got me. It was terrible. Like, in the sense, he was really treating me like a tourist and taking me on like a tour. And I was like, no, man, like, I just want to go be with the people. But again, my first day, I'm not really sure what's safe, what I can do, what I can't do. And I need to experience it for myself, right? It's so important to do that. And I got to the market, and there's such a contrast. It's such a contrast because, firstly, like, outside of the market, it's amazing. There's a whole group of these Mozambicans dancing, and like everyone's dancing and light and funny, and at the same time it's like really, really hot, and then there's pollution and it's really dirty, but people are smiling and people are friendly, and also like everyone's sort of staring at me because I was looking around. I was the only white person who was at this market. So I'm a little bit tense. I'm not really sure. And then we start walking through the market, and it's very sad. It's very sad, and it's very difficult, and it's difficult to process how different things can be, how you can see, unfortunately, you can see so much poverty, you can see so much sadness, you can see hungry people, you can see all sorts of people, and it's really, really tough. And it's so interesting because that's not the African spirit, right? The African spirit, from my experiences of going around and making friends, it's light, and the people are, very, very welcoming, very friendly, very polite, very warm. They want you to be happy. They want to take care of you. They want you to enjoy everything. They want to share whatever they have, even if they have so little. And they're not concerned about having a little. And there's that side to it. And then there's like sort of like that unknown feeling of like, whoa, if I just look around at what's going on, this is really sad. And it's hard not to be affected. And I speak Portuguese, like I mentioned. So we were in the market, and the guide's like sort of like walking me around like a tourist. I'm like, all right, dude, I'm done with you. So I like book off to the left, and I find like this back area, and there were 3 women who were like, they were selling spinach or greens or some leaves, and it was adorable. I have this picture. All 3 of them are just like sleeping. It's so hot. They're sleeping on the greens. And I just like, I snap a quick photo, and then I keep walking. And as I'm walking, one of them lifts their head up, and I say, "Bom dia," which means good morning, like as a joke. And she was like, "Oh, bom dia." And then we just like started talking. I was like, "Oh, how was your nap? It looks so comfy," all of these sorts of things. And it was like the moment that I was friendly and warm and welcoming and dancing with them, it was like we were best friends. Like, they were so playful, they were so fun, they were so loving, they were so light. One of them proposed to me. She wanted to get married. It was like, I'm looking around like, what is going on? Where am I? But it's sort of like, I think in any conversation about traveling Africa, I think that's the first thing that I would say that I've learned, that when you open up and you show warmth and you show kindness and you show playfulness to people, everyone will respond. But if you're sort of going around and you're tenuous and you're timid and you're uncertain because you don't know how to process what's going on, then people can sense that energy. So it really, like, that was the moment where I really felt like my trip began. And I was like, oh my God, these people are amazing. Then I was like walking through the market, making jokes with everybody, laughing. And I always, my goal, my intention always, when I travel and when I don't, if I'm speaking to clients or if I'm hanging out with friends or whatever I'm doing, I always try to bring the positivity. I always try to bring the good energy, the good vibes. And I caught it from those women, and we laughed and we took photos, and I played Brazilian music and we danced. And then I was just like walking through the market, friends with everyone, feeling like I was friends with everyone. And it was so impactful and it was so awesome. And that like set the tone for me, where I was like, whoa, for me, coming from the outside, I look and I think, wow, these circumstances are so difficult and so challenging. And like, at the start, that was the energy I was putting out. But then when I was like, oh no, actually these people want to connect and they want to have fun and they want to be light and they want to joke and this is what they love doing, everything changed. So that really, my time in Mozambique, I was working for a majority of it, but I had a really, really cool experience also. I met an awesome guy named Gili. He was driving the boat when we went scuba diving. And I can speak, again, I'm able to speak to all of these people fluently, which is super cool. Like again, tip, invest in learning a language, whatever language it is, just like learn as many languages as you can and travel the world and meet people and talk to them. That's what I would say is an amazing resource of your time alive. And like from the start, Gilly and I were bros, and we went on our first dive. I hadn't dove in 10 months, and I'm not, to be honest, disclaimer, I'm not the best. Like in kite surfing, I'm not the best, but I love it, and I'm natural, and I feel part of the community. I never, like when I'm with other like divers, you know, some people have like the massive gear and the underwater cameras, and like, I'm like, this is just super cool. I love feeling like I'm floating in outer space and looking at what's going on 20 feet under the sea, or 20 meters. But I don't really always feel like I'm part of that community, which is fine. And I ended up using my oxygen tank 15 minutes faster than everyone else. So like in the community, that makes you a loser. So hi, I'm a scuba diving loser. Nice to meet you. My name's Cory. But I was cool with it, and I just went on the boat, and like Gilly and I were just chatting. It was the two of us on this small little boat bobbing up and down, and he was telling me about his life and what his family's like and where he lives. And I was just like, dude, when, you know, let's meet up. And he's like, cool, tonight I'm going out with my friends. You're welcome to join us. He ended up taking me out with all of his friends. They gave me a nickname, which is Salsa. Salsa, Salsa, Salsa. It was in Mozambican slang of Portuguese, salsa means like cool, easygoing. So I noticed that one of his friends, like every other word he said was salsa. So then I started saying salsa, and he just thought it was so funny, you know, that a Mzungu would be saying salsa. So he just called me salsa, and like Gilly took me out with all of his friends. We had a barbecue by the beach. We went dancing. We stayed out the whole night. And what's so funny also is I recorded a podcast about how to connect with local people. And I spoke about Gilly, and I recorded that right before I went out. I ended up going out and having the best night ever with him. It's about him. It's not about me. He was just like, he did everything to make sure that I was comfortable and taken care of, and like, oh, Salsa, how can we help you? Salsa, are you having fun? Salsa, try this. Salsa, do that. And it was just really, really beautiful. And then I became really, really good friends with him and his buddy Osvaldo, and they ended up taking me to the sand dunes for sunset. And it's like, sometimes it's so strange in life, in travel. Like I look around, I'm on the back of this pickup truck. It's a perfect sunset. We're just coming back from being on these red sand dunes, and I'm speaking Portuguese with these boys, and I feel like they're my brothers. And I'm like, how did I get here? How does this happen? But for me, those are the travel experiences that really, really light me up the most. So that was a little bit about my time in Mozambique. Again, like the first lesson being like, be playful, be light, be joyful, engage with others, and focus on those positive aspects. From Mozambique, I flew to Zambia, and I was in Lusaka, the capital, for a night, and I went to the National Museum. I have a thing about always going to national museums wherever I travel. Zambia, which used to be called Northern Rhodesia. I mean, look, any African museum you go to will be very, very, in some ways, very difficult and sad. Like, you know, the history of colonialism that took place in Northern Rhodesia and the slave trade and all of the corruption and pain. And it's very, very difficult. But I always think it's important to go to a place and understand what it's about. And then from Lusaka, I took a flight to a town called Livingston. And Livingston is the tourist capital. That's what everyone calls it. Also, I get a bracelet for every trip I go on, and I got a really snazzy Rasta Zambian bracelet that I just felt so good about. So that's been with me on this whole trip. Livingston is the tourist capital of Zambia, but one thing that I've heard from everyone in terms of tourism is that since COVID, tourism has gone significantly down. So it's sort of bizarre because you show up to this airport, and the airport in Livingston would be a theme for me on my trip. And it's like this massive airport, and there's nothing cooking. Like 2 flights a day, maybe a flight a day to the capital, or, you know, just very, 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 very limited activity. But I went to Livingston because this is where Victoria Falls are. And I know that Victoria Falls is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. It was really cool. Elena, who's on my team, she was at Iguazu Falls in South America, which I think is also one of the natural wonders of the world. But it had been on my quote-unquote bucket list for a long time to go to Victoria Falls. And I can just speak, Zambia, where Livingston is, it's on the Zambezi River. And I stayed at a really cool lodge called the River Club. And it was, oh my God, it was incredible. It's the nature there is amazing. From the lodge, you look out to the river, so you can see elephants crossing. You can see hippos in the water. They do a sunset boat tour where you go look for wildlife. We saw lots of hippos. We saw lots of crocs. We saw some elephants. I went to a special elephant rehabilitation center where it's called Elephant Cafe, where you feed the elephants and then you have dinner while like you're watching them graze. And it was, my God, I was giddy like a child being beside these elephants, and just, oh my God, their trunk is so funny and so cute, and their eyes, they are so wise, these elephants. It's so humbling. They're really, really such incredible creatures. And so that was really a highlight. And Victoria Falls was amazing as well. I don't have too much to say about it. I crossed over into Zimbabwe. I did a tour from the Zimbabwe side because it's split between Zambia and Zimbabwe. And there's a famous bridge that was built in the early 20th century. It was opened by Charles Darwin's grandson. And you cross this beautiful bridge to go between Zambia to Zimbabwe. And I did a hike and a tour of the falls from the Zimbabwe side. Then I came to the Zambian side. I did a tour there. The next day, I went swimming in what's called Devil's Pools, which is like, wow, that was crazy. It's they basically let you swim on the edge of the top of the falls because and I don't know how they discovered this, but in one part of the falls, there's like a dip and like a deep pool. So it's a pool in the sense that it's strong enough that there's a wall that you can put your hands on, but you swim through it. And that was the first like organized tour I did. And I had so much fun. I met an Irish guy who was so funny. And like, he was just, sometimes I love traveling stereotypes, but like the Irish guy was like 9:30, we went swimming, and he had already had a couple of beers, but he was such good fun and so light. And I met a really cool couple that they're Americans and they teach in Vietnam. And then every time they have break, they travel somewhere new, which was really inspiring. It's always cool to see people like that. And and it was just a wonderful experience. But when I talk about Zambia, I have to tell the story of my friends Sylvia and Lucky. So what happened was my visa for Kenya got delayed, and it kept getting delayed and kept getting delayed and kept getting delayed. So the first time I went to my flight, and I was like, oh yeah, like it'll be here on time. I go, the visa still didn't show. I waited around, the visa didn't show. They're like, okay, fill out this form to see what's going on with it. We always get a response back in a day. Come back tomorrow. You can get the same flight tomorrow at the same time. So then I was like, oh, okay. I thought I was going to Kenya, and I was supposed to go to my client's festival and then hang out with my friend Paige and then go to Nauru Island, and none of that was happening. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm still in Livingston. And I needed to use a phone, a local phone, because I don't have I deleted my WhatsApp and I don't have a phone number. So I see like these group of like these two kids waiting by the door, and I was like, hey, do you mind if I use your phone? And they're like, okay, sure. We start talking a little bit. I was like, where are you guys going? They're like, oh, we work at the restaurant in the airport, but we're going back into town. I said, cool, can I come with you? They're like, sure. So I go with them. We end up taking like this big bus with 9 people crammed into 4 spots, and we're talking to them, and they're really, really nice. And I was like, okay, cool, nice to meet you. There's a local gym that I wanted to check out, so I went to the gym and I figure everything out. Then I go back the next day, and I'm checking my email every 5 minutes, and the visa's not showing up. It's not showing up. It's not showing up. And I go to the airport anyways because they told me, they're like, it always comes within a day. And the visa doesn't show, and they're like, okay, well, you have to wait for the visa. Now there's no flights until Sunday, but you can go to Lusaka, tomorrow, and maybe if it comes, you can go from Lusaka. So like, okay, I'll figure it out. Anyways, I see my friends again, Lucky and Sylvia, and I remember their names so well because there's a song Lucky by Radiohead and there's a song Sylvia by Mike Snow, which are two songs I love. I was like, oh, you guys both have songs I love. And they were like, that whole ride was so funny, and they were so open and so friendly. And I saw them again. I was like, hey guys, like, can I catch a ride back with you again? And they're like, yeah, sure. So we're talking and talking about all of these things. And as we're going back, this time the company sent a van to pick them up and two of their other coworkers. And they're like, oh, what are your plans? What are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm going to go back to my hotel. I'm staying at the David Livingston Hotel and Spa. And they're like, oh, wow, that's such a nice hotel. We've always heard about it. We've never seen it. We've never been in. And I was like, cool, why don't you guys come with me and come have dinner and let's have fun and let's enjoy. And they were shocked. They couldn't believe it. I was like, yeah, obviously just come. And I just have to interject one little part of this story. That the real reason why I invited them, I wasn't like, oh, I was lonely or oh, I really want to do something nice. But the day before, they ended up missing their bus, which is why we had to cram into that van with all those people. And the reason why they missed their bus is because they were helping out another passenger on that flight to Nairobi who needed a hotspot and didn't have Wi-Fi, but needed to do something with the visa. So the two of them waited for this guy, they waited 30 minutes. And as we were walking, I remember them saying yeah, now we missed the shuttle that the company provides for us. And we only did it because we were trying to help someone. And I think I made a comment sometimes it doesn't pay to help people. And then afterwards I felt so strange about saying that because it's not really how I live my life or what I'm about. And so it was that comment inspired me. And then when I saw them, I was like, okay, I want to sort of restore that. Hey, you tried to help someone and you suffered, some sort of injury as a result of doing that or some interruption to your life. But I want you to believe that doing the right thing is it's good. It's good to help people. It's good to do these things. I don't know, that's where all this was coming from. So they had mentioned to me, they'd never been to the hotel. I was like, cool, come. So the driver drops us off and I paid for everything, and I was paying for everything, and I'll explain why I think this is relevant in a moment. But they're like, oh, because the driver would drive them to town on behalf of the company, but to take us to the hotel, which was a little bit further, we had to pay. And I'm just going into this with an open heart, where I'm like, okay, I don't think anyone's trying to take advantage of me. I just want to show them a good time. And they were like kids in a candy store at the David Livingston Hotel and Spa. They were having the best time. We sat, I think we got there at 5 or 6 p.m. when they got off work and when I missed the flight. And they stayed till midnight. And we were ordering drinks and we ordered dinner. I don't drink, but everyone was ordering drinks. And there was a beautiful boat that the hotel has. So I went on the boat with the girls. I was taking pictures of them for their Instagram. And it was just it was so cool. It was so nice. It was just so loving. I was so happy to be able to share that with them. And they were, New Year's was, we were a couple of days away from New Year's, and they were like, oh, this is New Year's for us. We're so happy. And I could just tell that it meant so much to them. And for me, it was absolutely a pleasure. And in talking with them and learning more about their life, I really learned how difficult real life in Zambia is. And they were telling me that they work, usually 7 days a week. Sometimes they get a day off, but very rarely. And they earn $50 a month. And that's with their employers, maxing out all of the effort and making them be, they have to do all of these things for work. And often they don't get paid till 2 or 3 months afterwards. And that was that just put a real perspective shift on everything for me. Because you don't know, okay, I'm in this country, I see these workers at a restaurant, but I was like, wow, $50 a month to work 7 days, 12 hours a day. So once it was like that, we talked about entrepreneurialism and some ideas and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, it was just humbling and it was beautiful. Zambia is a really, really peaceful, loving country. One really interesting thing about life in Livingston is that there really are issues with the animals. People die from hippos every year. People die from elephants every year. It was so interesting to learn about the actual dangers of this, where for us, I can only speak for myself. For myself, it's oh, elephants, so beautiful and cute. Hippos, well, I think I don't know if you know, but hippos are pretty dangerous. And it was such a contrast to hear like some of the stories they know of people who had been killed by these wild animals. So it was a different perspective. But Zambia as a whole, super polite. Even Lusaka as a capital city, an African city, super relaxed, super calm, very nice people, very friendly people, really, really only the best things that I could ever possibly say about it. And that experience with Sylvia and with Lucky really, really made the trip for me. And it's so interesting because, you know, I was obviously frustrated when the visa didn't come, but I noticed that when I almost left Zambia without a local experience. And also, I forgot to mention this, but like the night that I missed my flight, I was a little bummed out, and I checked into this hotel, and I swear this guy just came up to me out of nowhere. He's like, "Hey man, we're going to karaoke tonight. You coming with?" And I was like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going. This is my sister. These are my friends." And like a whole group of locals from Livingston and just came up to me and invited me. And then I went to karaoke with them, and I met all these people from Botswana and people from Namibia, and I had the best night ever. So it's so funny because I remember going to the airport. I was thinking like, whoa, in Zambia, I only really went to the River Club and to this hotel in Lusaka, and I didn't really get to have local interactions. And then by the time that I left, I was able to have so many local interactions, which was so special. And then lastly, I'll talk a little bit about Ghana, and I think I'm going to do a full episode on Escape 3 Points, which is where I am now. But the visa to Kenya just wasn't coming. It wasn't coming through. And so coming to Ghana has always been a dream of mine. It was December 31st, and I was like, why would I wait to live my dream? Like, I've already been to Kenya. I know Kenya. So I went on the Ghanaian visa website, and I saw they had a visa-free period from December 1st to January 15th. And I was like, boom, that's a sign. Saw there was a flight in like 2 hours. Like, boom, purchased the flight, packed my bags, got out of there, and came to Ghana. Wow, Ghana has been such a blessing and such an interesting experience for me. It's the first Western African country that I've been to. So I've been to Morocco and Tunisia and Egypt, which is more of like, you know, the northern and some Arab African countries. I'd been to Kenya and Tanzania and South Africa. So I'd been to some, you know, on that part, but I'd never been to West Africa. And there is so much culture in Accra. Accra is the capital city. It's big, there's pollution, there's traffic, but I basically spent the first 3 days just jumping from gym to museum to restaurant to gym to museum to restaurant. And I learned so much about Pan-Africanism. And there was one of the leaders of Pan-Africanism, his name is Du Bois. I went to the Du Bois Museum. There's also the first president of Ghana in 1957. I can't pronounce his name. I'm so sorry. Nkrumah. I'm sorry. I can't pronounce his name properly. But it was so interesting to learn that Ghana was really like this hub for Africanism, and they were the first country in Africa to liberate themselves from the colonists and to claim independence. And it's such a hub. There's such a force. There's such an amazing energy to it. And I was in the city for 4 days, which was really, I went there because I went to the National Museum, I went to the President's Museum, I went to the local markets, I went to the Du Bois Museum, and I went to Osu Castle, which was one of the castles where they shipped slaves from, which was the most difficult day of the trip, was seeing the dungeons where they kept slaves and understanding the process. Like, wow, just horrific. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to come to the beach. And I found this place called Escape 3 Points. And Escape 3 Points is, if I could create anything, and I guess I can because I'm a powerful creator, but Escape 3 Points is what I would create. And it's just this man, Akwasi, he's the owner. He's Ghanaian and he's half Canadian. He has a French wife. He's got 2 kids. He bought this beautiful property on the beach, which I am now, where I've rented this podcast studio space from. And he just built an amazing eco lodge, compost toilets. You shower out of buckets. Everything is made using natural materials. Where I am right now in the Palm Tree Cathedral, everything is made from bamboo or from wood on the site. And it's just the most incredible beach with amazing stars and amazing sunset and amazing sunrise. And I've just felt so at peace, and I've had so much fun while I've been here. And there are two things that I want to share from my experience here at Escape 3 Points. I think one is how important it is to understand what makes you feel at home and what makes you feel comfortable. And it's amazing that I'm so far from home and I had none of this planned and I had no idea where I'd end up. But for me, coming to nature always makes me feel like home. And last night I took a pillow, I sat under the stars, there was not a cloud in the sky, it's a new moon, it was just absolutely filled with stars. And every night that I've been here, I've sat there looking at the stars, and I feel so much at home when I do that. And it's so incredible, for at least for me in my personal learning and my process of just realizing, like, okay, nature is the place where this is it. This is what lights me up. It's not a 5-star hotel. It's not flying first class. It's not any of those things. It's really just being in nature and living simply. So that's been a really, really powerful reminder. Secondly, what's been so amazing is the people who I've met at this lodge. Like, I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea how to get here. A taxi picked me up from an airport in a small town called Takoradi. And I swear, like, the first person I met was reading The Alchemist. She loves Abraham Hicks. We've read so many of the same books. She's a yoga teacher, just such an interesting person with such an interesting outlook. And it's amazing that, and that was like, then I met everyone I've met. Like, I met another kid who's graduating college right now from NYU. He did a study on entrepreneurialism in Ghana. And he was reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's just been like, it's crazy when you go to the places that you really love, who you'll meet. So that's been amazing. So firstly, Ghana, like the importance of nature. Secondly, when you're in places that you love, you meet amazing people. And then thirdly, just seeing Akwasi and what he created from a vision is unbelievable. Like he told me his story. He's like, I was living in Accra, and I would, see glimpses of the beach in between taxi rides, going from meeting, being stressed out. And he's like, I'm not here for this, man. So he's a surfer. He came to this region many, many years ago. He bought some land and he works on it every day, and he's built it and he's developed it. But he really is just an all-star also because I watch the way that he parents. And it's not often for me that I see people where I think, wow, that's an amazing role model for how I want to parent and how I want to raise a family. But his kids are always outside. He always gets to be with his kids. They're in nature together. They're doing healthy, wonderful activities. It's definitely an unconventional lifestyle, but he's just inspired me so much in terms of raising a family and what it can look like. You meet those people sometimes and they show you what it can look like. So that's what I've taken from here. So as you can hear, I hope you've enjoyed listening to these stories. I hope that there's some sort of tidbit that's helpful and interesting for you. And I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this. I hope that some of it's been interesting. It's really cool for me to reflect in this particular way. I've traveled for so long and I never really take time to sit down and talk about it and break things down. But look, at the end of the day, it's a very, very different way to travel, to not really have things planned, to just go with the flow. But what's so amazing is when you allow things to happen, the most beautiful experiences take place. And really Zambia was that for me, where, I had my plan, I had what I thought I was going to do. I got a curveball and it just turned into something amazing. And I know that I'll always remember Sylvia and Lucky and what they've taught me. And I hope that they have positive memories of the time that we spent together, and, that they see, oh, here's like, random people can do really nice things, which, just as an aside, like if you're listening to this, maybe do an act of good deed to a stranger today. That would be awesome as well. And then just like, man, I'm in Palm Tree Cathedral by the beach. I've been here for days recording podcasts and enjoying life. And I had no idea this place existed before I came. And it's just so magical to be here, to see it. It's so affirming. It restores my faith in humanity. It restores my faith in travel. It restores my faith in nature. And what an amazing gift. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. And remember, whatever you're doing, keep doing it in a way that you love. And most importantly, stay weird.